Hey guys, welcome to the Wild Bit Show. I am Upamanyu,
And I'm Meghna.
and we've got a great show planned for you. We'll, of course, be talking about what is the headline topic of this week, where landmines have become this unexpected protectors in a demilitarized zone. We also have on the roster a story about a megafish, which has become this collector's item in Thailand. What else have we got, Meghna?
Okay, so we also have this really interesting topic that wild pigs are turning electric blue in California. And we're going to find out the reason that why is this happening. And after that, we're going to talk about how community efforts have yielded a new marine protected area in the Philippines. So, in connection with this, we're going to talk about another community project in Mexico that's saving the ocelots there. That's about it from my side.
Cool. Let's jump straight into what is the headline topic of this week. Landmines have become the greatest protectors. This is an article from The Guardian, and it goes on to say how wildlife is thriving in the Korean demilitarized zone. Um, so, the demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea, a 155-mile fortified strip after the 1950-1953 Korean War, has become an ecological sanctuary. Despite being one of the world's most militarized borders, strewn with landmines, this zone has inadvertently protected biodiversity for over 70 years. That's a long stretch of time um, in conservation um, in general. You don't hear that big a number often, so that's a good thing. But also, how it has gotten there is a little bit concerning. But we'll explore those things. Now, an ecological oasis. It hosts nearly 6,000 documented species. Again, that is a very big number as well. 6,000 species, including white naped cranes, deer, and bears. So I think this also reminds me of another area, which was, I think, covered in detail in the BBC natural history documentary series called Mammals, I want to say. That was the Golan region, where it's a similar case where there are wolves that um, are thriving there because of the same reason. So, what is happening here is um, the landmines are, of course, dangerous for humans. We don't have the sensory faculties to be able to um, detect or sort of say where landmines are, like without like fancy equipment. But these animals are more, you know, they have a more heightened sense of smell or sense of all their senses are much more heightened than ourselves. And what is happening is, because no humans can go there, of course, the hunting pressures and all the other pressures that come on wildlife due to um, because of humans are absent in that zone. So wildlife has found its way, both flora and fauna, and they are thriving there. And I mean, it's a big win, as from the face of it, but I also think, like, how this win is being achieved, you know, for something where humans possibly cannot go. That's the only place where, wildlife can thrive in that zone. Talking about the sort of North Korea, South Korea border, um, is says a lot of things about us as well. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
What?
I think I don't know if you've ever seen those videos. So it's on YouTube. It says I don't know why I even watch them, but it says what would happen if humans disappeared right this second.
Mm,
So then you would have this video where humans are walking and they just disappear, and then it talks about how all the nuclear reactors or the power plants are going to burst because there's obviously no one manning it and controlling it. It talks about how the pet dogs go wild, and then eventually it talks about a scenario where like the cooling has happened off after the nuclear period, and you
mm,
can see animals thriving and creepers growing everywhere, and the earth is back to this mix of like it used to be like whatever the buildings and everything, but then now there's like everything growing over it and all the animals are everywhere. So it shows obviously the effect and the impact that if we don't have, obviously the impact is also something we created. This nuclear power plants and everything will be an impact that we created, but the overall scenario is that once we go, it actually helps the environment. And this is what I think this article is also showing, that you take the humans out of the equation, like just keep them far far away and everything will be great.
yes, I think another thing that I was thinking recently is there's this one creator again. That's my algorithm on YouTube, but there's this one creator who has this huge lawn in his backyard. He actually has like a golf course in his backyard, and he spends immense amount of time maintaining the lawn. So I just see the amount of effort. I mean, effort, it's up to the particular individual themselves, but the amount of water and the amount of uh, care that goes into maintaining that one species of grass just because it's not where it's supposed to be. So I see the amount of effort that goes in there, and the creator also talks about how you have to take care of grass, how you have to replace like dry patches of grass, this and that, how they're like concrete, or if there's like stones uh, inside the surface layer of soil, how the grass won't grow and dry out and things like that. But you see any abandoned space, and this has been a theme of, I think, natural history documentaries in the recent sort of 3 4 years, where they have taken these um, abandoned nuclear towns, abandoned mining towns, abandoned sort of abandoned places and spaces where both plants, they have like, forget soil, they have penetrated the concrete and all the other human made objects that are there, but also how wildlife is sort of thriving in those regions as well. I was talking about Golan Heights. Yeah, it's a similar case um, there, where the minefields there um, is a safe zone because no humans are allowed there and no humans can go there. The minefields are the safe zone for the wolves there. So I think this is becoming a theme, and I think what Meghna said is very important. Where the crux of the matter is that if you give wildlife and nature the chance or the space to recover, it will recover. It is that resilient. It is that sort of, it has those checks and balances that it is 100% able to recover. And that just goes on to show that how big of a part I think we as human beings play in this whole sort of equation in, in overall.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think it's interesting you talk about that grass thing because, in some areas of the world, like New Zealand, it rains almost the whole year because of how, where it's placed and what the
weather
weather patterns
systems,
are.
yeah.
But in India, it's a really hot country, but still we have a particular monsoon season where it rains. It may rain outside the monsoon season, but just a few showers here and there. But just that one monsoon season and the water that the plants get, they survive till the next monsoon season. So the trees that you see everywhere next to the road and the trees that you see everywhere, nobody is watering any of the trees, but they are surviving just based on that. So that extra care that goes into growing something that doesn't belong there as opposed to something that belongs there and can grow are two very different things. And
Yes.
yeah, so I think that's the same thing with even animals, like how we were talking about, like, last episode when I was saying adopt the local breeds. This is also the reason. Like, anything that's local and that belongs in that area is way more resilient than something that you would introduce and that's not belonging to that area.
Yeah, and the article also says this very clearly, that ironically the very things designed to keep people out, barbed wire, military installations, and countless landmines, have served as the greatest protectors for the thriving wildlife that now calls this forbidden yet peaceful landscape its home. So I think that goes on to highlight the um, the sort of like philosophical conflict that's there in this scenario, where we have to be taken out of the equation, and it's really sad as well. um, but unfortunately, the way we have built our society, the way we have built all the things that we call necessary, oh, this is necessary for us to go about in our daily lives, just because the way society is built, and it's very difficult, I think, to get out of that cycle for most people as well. But the way we have our society built, we have to be taken out of the equation for and look at the extent the animals are surviving. Like, look at you know the success, the amount of success these animals are having. There's 6,000 documented species, and they've been there for like over 70 years in a peaceful manner. They're not harming us, we're not harming them. We are forced not to go there, so we can't harm them, basically. So, and that sort of is our discussion question as well. How does the DMZ, demilitarized zone, illustrate the paradox where human absence due to conflict can inadvertently benefit wildlife conservation? And I think my question would be to you as well, Meghna. I think, like, of course, this is a unique scenario, and we don't want to repeat this scenario. Like, we don't want to go planting landmines and, giving barbed wire in most, you know, areas. But is there a way we can take inspiration from this and replicate this where it doesn't require for us to plant like thousands of landmines and um
I
you
think
know
that's what they call national parks and forests. I think the areas that they cordon off and protect. I mean, this is just a one-off where we know. Now we do not
mm,
have documented evidences or of other areas. Now there are different areas across the world, land-based borders, where you might have same stretches, so, these demilitarized zones where you probably have like barbed wires on both sides. So even with India, Pakistan, and a lot of other land-based countries probably have, where the border relations are not great, and those areas have not been explored, so we do not know how they're thriving. This one has been explored, so we know they're thriving. But I think this is a lesson for us to know that what our impact does to an area and what we should be doing to not have that kind of impact. And one of the main things that I would say is, population, like the that we are skyrocketing at an unprecedented pace. Obviously, there are some areas that are slower and some areas that have an aging population, while other places are rocketing. But overall, we are rocketing, and that's not good for us or the climate. And obviously, we need the climate. I mean, we need the environment to survive on. So we need to take care of it for it to take care of us.
Yeah, I think that is, yeah, beautifully said. And I think we we as a whole, there are ways we can impact the environment directly. And I think we have covered a few of them, and we'll continue sort of covering a few of them as and when sort of those things come up in our discussions. But um, I think things like, you know, letting the animals thrive in the y- you know, protected ecosystems, not wanting to, for us as a society, not wanting to always expand into the national parks. As Meghna said, that is what we have decided as these protected sanctuaries. This has happened inadvertently, but that is very intentional. National parks and other protected sanctuaries, they're very
I
intentional.
I also wanted to ask you, like, I mean, I know the smaller species and them stepping on the landmines would not mean a thing, but bigger species like bears, are they also able to snip out the landmines and avoid them, or how does it work for bigger species with the landmines? Because if that is how you can keep humans away, wouldn't it help to just have landmines across all the border areas where poachers come, so that when the poachers land, they burst, but the animals have no harm from the landmines?
Yes, I think that the issue there, in what I would imagine is the issue there, is, you know, this has happened because this has happened inadvertently, and this is a military zone and this and that. We can't, um we can't really do anything about it. So yeah, the animals can just exist. But if we have to do it ourselves, like we have to intentionally plant landmines and things like that, to keep humans out, especially landmines. I mean, barbed wires and all those other things might be fine anywhere, but to plant landmines, I think it would need a lot more research for us to be intentionally able to say, okay, we want to plant landmines there, because again, we'll need to study the animals. Maybe if you're talking about, you know, India or Africa, where they're like bigger mammals, uh, yeah, elephants might, even if they can sniff out the landmines, they might not be able to completely avoid it. I don't know how it happens, but animals definitely can sniff out landmines from small to big, and they can avoid, and that's what is happening in the Golan region, as I mentioned, and that's what I believe is happening here as well. And if any of you know or have heard about African pouched rats, they are really, really good. They're like a kind of big sized rats, who are really good at sniffing out landmines, and and they are used to sniff out and eliminate landmines from like war zones, across, across the world, and like the places where we would like to use that place, humans would like to use that place and not just leave it there. um yeah, the African pouch rats are very, one, they are very light as well, so it won't activate the landmine, but also they are very, the sense of smell, and the also I think the sense to smell the radioactivity is very high, where yeah, it can go and sniff out the landmines. um yeah, so I think that's the whole point. Like, if we intentionally want to do that, there will be a lot of backlash from all the different groups, even from conservationists, I think. Yeah, so that's why I said, like, this might not be a strategy we could apply. This might not be a model we could apply, but
But it would be a very effective anti-poacher
I would
model.
think, I agree. I agree. It would be a
I
very
mean,
effective model.
everything else that we're doing, I don't know, trying to dehorn the rhinos, and then having whatever other rules for poaching and anti-poaching and trying to catch these poachers. The landmines would be just like one quick
I
way
think
to
this
deter
is
them.
this is the answer to your question where you asked a couple of episodes ago, like, why dehorn them? Why not, do
Yeah,
something to keep us out? And I think this is one of the answers that that is that very effective, very direct, very bold strategy to keep humans out completely.
it's just that I think when if there are like human patrolling people, then you have to be very
Yeah,
careful about where the landmines are. So it would deter the
yeah.
poachers, but at least the people have to have some kind of maybe device or something to tell them which
Yeah,
ones
I
to
think
avoid.
that's where the problem comes in. If you plan and plant the whole point of landmines is nobody knows where they are. They're just dropped from the sky, and then nobody knows where they are. But if you plan them, then if the guards have that, you have to guard that planned map like it's some kind of secret, and nobody can get access to it, or nobody can get access to the devices that are used to detect them or whatever. So I think if there's a planned thing, then the poachers and everyone else can get access to it as well. Um, I
No,
would
I
imagine.
mean, obviously, giving out a device would leak who the person is, and without the device, I think it would be harder to communicate. But
Mm.
either way, I think that's a really good solution to every problem that we have. Do you know how long do landmines just stay? Like in the sense, can they detonate even up to 100 years after it, or do they like that? They
The,
seem to be really effective. If they can go off even after 70 years.
yes, I think landmines have a really big what is called what I can call the shelf life. I'll just do a quick search on it as well. Um, yeah, it says 50 years. So yeah, I think give or take a few years here and there. If it's not activated, then it can probably stay there for a long time. I would imagine. I mean, it has been going for 70 years, and the whole point of it is it's such a volatile thing. Um, if it gets activated, even if the sort of the deadline or whatever is passed, even nobody would dare step there
Yeah,
in that area,
but
right?
I think if it's been 70 years now, then maybe probably all of them are deactivated by themselves, right? Like they're not functional in the DMZ area.
Maybe,
I'm
maybe,
assuming. I mean,
yeah.
maybe what deters people from crossing that area are the animals now than the landmines.
Yeah, and I think this border area it is demilitarized, but it is still, I would think, if it's a strip between the North Korea and South Korean borders, I would think that it is still a place where no ordinary person can wander and go. I would think,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
on
think
top of there being landmines.
the demilitarization probably only applies to the area inside, but on the
Yeah.
barbed wire and wherever there are checkposts and
Yes.
patrolling, that obviously happens. But either way, I don't think people would want to go, knowing that there are
Exactly.
landmines, knowing
Knowing
that
that
there
the
are
landmines are there.
yeah, and knowing that there are bears and probably other animals. And it's 155 miles, so it's going to take a lot of days to cover that stretch. So either way, I think it will be really foolish of someone to try to attempt that.
True.
But it
True.
might help the animals have a change in their meat and other things if people venture and
Yes. Um. Cool. I think that was a great positive story. Net positive, I would say. Again, the means. We say that the means do not matter as long as the result is fruitful, but I think here, the means to reach that fruitful result is kind of sad, and goes on to show that how much of an impact we have been having on the natural world. But I would say that it's a net net positive overall. Cool. We can probably move on to the next item on the dock.
Yep. The next item is wild pigs are turning electric blue in California.
Yeah, that's very
So
interesting.
feral hogs are displaying bizarre slushy blue innards. So the inside of their body, it's slushy blue, and they were discovered in Monterey earlier this year, a concerning recurrence for the region. This unusual internal discoloration in wild swine is not unprecedented, having baffled wildlife experts and locals in previous instances. While the exact cause of the hog's cerulean organs remains under investigation, past theories frequently attributed to the consumption of specific environmental substances. Suspected culprits include rodenticides or particular native plants prevalent within the monetary system. Feral hogs are already a notorious invasive species known for their widespread ecological damage and agricultural destruction. The reappearance of this strange characteristic adds a perplexing layer to managing their population, prompting urgent inquiries into potential environmental contaminants within their foraging habitats. Identifying the source of the blue coloration is crucial for understanding any broader ecological or public health implications, highlighting an ongoing environmental mystery. And for those who do not know, let me just share. Okay, I think Oops has already shared the screen. So you can see how on their body it's so electric blue. Like you can see how blue it is. Um, so it's quite interesting. So now it's still speculative as to what has caused this. So it could be the rodenticides or whatever they're using, but it could also be probably the plants, but nobody can tell why.
But
And we
but
do not
it's
even know.
it's a but it at the very least, I would say it is some kind of man-made chemical that is, or like an introduced chemical that's causing this. Or is there a chance that the article says that it could be something natural as well?
I mean, it says it there is a chance because they're not completely sure,
Hmm.
but they think it is more because of the rodent poison, because the rodent poison is usually dyed blue, and probably
Right.
so the whatever the bait is used for as rodenticide, um, it's this chemical called diphenol. So it could be
Hmm.
that the rodents are poisoned, and then the hogs consume the poisoned rodents, and for some reason their system is ingesting the poison and not affecting them to the same extent that it would affect a rodent. So for it's the same, I think I would say the dose which would be lethal for a rodent and would kill it might not be lethal enough for a hog. So instead of probably affecting them directly, indirectly, it's kind of making their internal organs and their skin go blue. Now we do not know what the long-term impact of this is, but the poison is something that's being ingested and then it's coming out, on their skin and their insides.
Right. And I think also the I think the reason why this is being widely discussed as well, I think, is because people actually like kill those hogs and eat them. So I think it's also that has a chance to um poison the humans, which is, I would believe, the very reason, a lot of effort is going into looking into what is happening there as well. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I would
think
think.
it says here that in large doses, diphenol causes severe bleeding in humans and other mammals
Hmm.
that can eventually be fatal. There isn't a lot of science to detail how much game meat and at what level of contamination a person can eat before getting sick. One study from 2011 found that cooking it would not make it safe. So, like how
Hmm.
Oops just mentioned, so people are hunting these hogs to eat them. But if the hogs are poisoned, and even if you cook them really well, the poison doesn't get out of the system, and it can make us fatally sick. So it is possible that somehow the pigs are really resilient, but we might not be as resilient to them as the pigs are. And when we were bringing up this topic, I think me and Oops and me were having this discussion. So in New Zealand, they use something similar. It's called 1080. and they use that in areas so that they can get these same invasive species out. And what they do is like they drop these pellets from the helicopters, and then these pellets are eaten by the animals, sometimes even the birds, and they all drop dead. Like it's lethal enough to make everything drop dead. But in that, and because sometimes these areas border human areas, it affects more than that. So I remember when I think I was doing a podcast, this woman told us how her dog went out and then got this little piece of skin, and I think it might have been of a hog or some other animal there, and their little and the dog like kind of ingested it or ate it or tasted it, one of the two things, but it started frothing at its mouth, and by the time it was taken to the hospital, it died. So like we do not know how potent these chemicals are and how potent they are for different species. So we just know that okay, it kills these animals, but we do not know the long term impact of these. We just introduce such things to the environment and we're like, yeah, fine, everything will be fine.
Yes, and I think also, achieving those goals as well. I definitely know New Zealand has a goal of getting rid of predators, invasive predators by 2050. Predator free 2050 as well. And the problem with how we work as individuals and as species, everyone would have experienced this. We are generally um, not doing anything about anything until the last possible moment.
I mean, until it affects us. Like, I tell
Until
people
it fix-
that if COVID just stayed with the bats and the animals and, it didn't really affect us directly, we wouldn't be shutting down airports, we wouldn't be, having lockdowns. It's only because it came to our species that we talk about it. I think it's similar, how we talk about how microplastics are now entering our diets because it's come from, different ocean animals or from different sources. But now,
Teflon.
yeah, so now they're saying like even kids, I think small kids, you can see microplastics in the body. So, but we still do not know if it's affecting us to the extent that it causes our death or it causes long term health implications. So people are like trying to figure that out. But if we start dying because of the microplastics, like suddenly, like we will do something about
Like
it. We
dying in
will.
large numbers, I would say. Dying in large enough numbers for it to, make the
Yes,
headlines and,
and
stuff.
tomorrow, like just tomorrow, there will be some new technology that wipes out all the microplastic out of the ocean. I mean, we will come up with that at bullet speed when it hits us. So I think that way we're really, really selfish species because we will use the animals when we want them, but then we're like, oh no, 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 but we don't want to be affected by them. So yeah, very convenient.
Yeah, and I think that's where it it forces us to take these drastic measures. Like even if when we have a goal, you know, maybe carbon free 2030 or whatever other goals that we have, because I know our country, India, it has a goal of, I think, carbon neutral 2030, or some year that is it's supposed to go carbon neutral. Um, and that's a goal, but we we are not taking that incremental steps to get there. What will happen is the 2030 year, as it nears, we will have to take these drastic measures if we want to hit that deadline. And I think how our brain works, it really works on deadlines, which can be a pro and a con. And it's just the way we as a species evolved, I think, um, of working on those deadlines. So we'll do all the work or most of the work and will be our most productive at that 11th hour. So we as a species, we are not very far sighted as a society, as a species.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think
so
Right now, also, they're only worried about the hogs because it affects the eating patterns of people. If it did
Correct.
not, I mean, they wouldn't care if,
I mean,
because
some groups would have been worried, like conservationists and others. But yeah, I don't think it would have been as swift an investigation or as swift um yeah,
yeah,
as
yeah.
swift an action
So
that would
and
have
the
been
thing
taken.
is that, I mean, with the hogs, they're surviving with it, and you can see their skin and their insides being blue. But with other animals, we do not even know. Like, I think one of the things with 1080 that was spoken in New Zealand was that a lot of other animals and birds that you're not focusing on, they die. So like a lot of
Mm.
birds have dropped dead, and there's no bird chirping sound in that area. So even though you're having these chemicals for certain animals, it doesn't mean that's the only animal that will ingest it. It could be like other species that you're not accounting for. So you might be wanting to protect this species, but probably that species is also being impacted the same way as the other animals that are being impacted. So you have to take that into
Yes.
account. Like anything chemically, anything that's negative, I think humans think that it's like one box and that's how it will work. And then you don't go out into the wild and check if it's actually working like that. And if it's not working like that, you will not tell in the news that that's how it's not working. So there are, like, I think, a lot of parameters and such kind of uh, gray areas.
Yes, and but Meghna, tell me this. I would imagine that all like sanctioning um these chemicals would have to go through some kind of you know first like a approval process that we can use these chemicals, but second, a process where where you study the environmental impact of those chemicals in general. And although not a long study, but there has to be the study that the companies and factories have to do with sort of with a qualified scientist in that domain, to be able to start using these chemicals. Do you think that part or that part of our process also needs to be strong enough to detect some of these things early in the whole chain?
I think when the process happens, that time they don't take it into account, that how up high in the chain of events in the food chain will it affect. So I think that's the stage where planning has to come in, because you
Mm,
have to be assured, and you have to be like 100%. You can be sure that, okay, if I give this animal the poison, then this animal will not be affected. But if we see the article, even in the article it says that in 2021, hunters were warned of diphenol contamination after a flock of geese with blue innards were found in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the San Francisco Bay Area is super popular. It has a lot of people, and I think they have hunting seasons there. But if the geese are also being poisoned, exactly what I was saying, that it can be the birds as well. It can be different animals that you were not focusing on. So that is what you need to take into account when you do these approvals, because I think what happens is that we kind of have this narrow approach when we single out a species, that okay, this one is invasive and this one is the one we want to kill. We don't take into account everything else that it probably might kill, like whatever we're doing.
mm, and I think the discussion question we had is pretty interesting as well, where um, we were thinking of asking ourselves that the blue dye is a warning sign for humans, as it points out in the article as well, but not for animals. Should manufacturers be required to include dye colors universally recognizable to wildlife? If that's practical, or is chemical exclusion the only reliable means of protection? What do you think about that, Meghna?
I then again, obviously, it will be really hard because you have to take into consideration all the animals, and every animal has a different spectrum of colors that they can see. So it probably might not be something that um, you can. very successfully implement. But maybe if you're sure about which species you want the warning sign to flash for, you might be able to find a color that's neutral for all of those animals. But again, even if you have like a color in it, it may or may not deter the animal from attempting to eat it, right? We do not know what is it that deters an animal from not eating something. So it might not be just a colored dye that might deter it. It has to have something else, maybe a smell that puts it off from it, or something else that puts it off from it. We are not sure that the dye is what will give them the warning.
Mm, And I think, again, as you said, like in New Zealand, it was the pets dying that really put this into the news cycle, and in this case, it's humans not being able to consume the hog meat, the bush meat, um, which has pushed this into action. Um, so I
Yep.
think,
But I
yeah,
think
every situation.
one of the interesting things also is that it says that even though these rodent poisons, it won't turn animals always brilliant blue, because it depends on how much dyed bait the animal eats. So it is possible
Mm,
that sometimes the animals consume less of the dyed meat or the dyed bait, and then they're not blue. So it makes it even harder for the hunters to know which animal is contaminated or not. So
mm.
that is also a thing that people need to take into consideration with these dyes and animals that consume it.
Yeah, I think as a whole, these things, as Meghna was saying as well, like we need to strengthen that process to make sure that we are near about 100% sure that this is not going to cause a significant damage to our ecosystems and to our environments. Um, yeah, I think that's sort of the lesson we should take um,
Yeah,
from the.
plus I think we do not know what this poison does. So if we are giving a really hard life for this animal to live with the poison in its system, we do not know. Like even if it is an invasive species, that's not how you would want, even a human to live or anything to live. So why would you do that
Yeah,
to an
I
animal?
mean, yeah, I think the the sort of counter or the justification for a lot of these poisons, especially the sodium and fluorine salts. So 1080 poison, that's sodium fluoroacetate. So it's a sodium and fluorine salt. Um, those poisons are really, really impactful and really like it kills you within a second. Um, so the justification we give again is that yeah, it's a really humane way of killing these animals and whatnot. Like we use the shotgun, like a horse killing gun, to get rid of like the old or in pain horses. One shot and they're gone. And yeah, so I think that's the that's the justification we give ourselves
Yeah,
um
I think that
to
that is
do all
where the
this.
problem is, because we do not know how it's impacting the hogs. And they are
Mm,
not going to like put money into that research because the hogs are invasive species. So we do not know. So until humans that are consuming it don't fall really sick, we wouldn't know how the animals are actually feeling. So that might not be taken into consideration until and unless it really, really starts impacting our consumption.
yeah, and I think that's the it's good. Like I would say that all these ecological disasters, if it can have a small, very small, not like, dying, humans are dying, or even one human is dying, I would never wish that upon another human being, but, some sort of impact it should have, enough enough for governments and everyone else to, and the news media to pick that up, and be like, oh, we really need to focus on this issue as well. Again, sad. that I'm having to say that, similar to the last article as well. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
unfortunately
think
the truth.
yeah, and I think this is what it is. Like at least the first news was net positive, right? This I don't know if it is negative, but in my opinion it would be a net negative news, just because it talks about poisoning, and then it talks about animals living with that poison, so it can't be really great. um but yeah, that's
And
I think.
this poison is also not intended to kill those animals, right? Like we are not wanting to get rid of them. It's just an innate like side effect of something else that we have been doing. Um,
I think it's supposed to
yeah.
kill the rodents, and then these pigs eat the rodents. The hogs eat
Right.
the rodents. That's where it's happening. So it's the rodents,
Mm.
because they want the hogs to be hunted, not to be killed by poison. They want
Yes,
the
they are
hung.
game
Yeah,
meat. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So they don't want to take them off by poisoning them. So it's really delicate, but I think it's one of those things where we think, we can exclude something. So you remember how we spoke, I think, a few episodes back, that when in New Zealand, rabbits were introduced, the rabbits started multiplying. So they were like, "Oh, let's
Mm.
let's get the stoats and ferrets in." And then when the stoats and ferrets came in, then they said, "Oh, the rabbits are really fast, but the birds are really slow, and they just stay
Mm.
on the land. Why don't we kill them?" So it
Mm.
backfired. So I think this is what in humans we don't take into consideration, the backfiring. That what
Mm.
if we do this, what backfiring would happen. So with even this, I think they know that okay, the rodents would die, but they did not take the backfiring going to geese, to hogs and other animals. They don't take
Mm.
that backfiring into consideration.
Mm. Mm. Um. Yeah, I think that's where you know we again. I said this multiple times. We are very good problem solvers. We are very good like we I have got a very good like if we put our mind to it, we can understand a lot of different issues and try and find creative but effective solutions for a lot of different issues. So I think yeah, as Meghna said very correctly and beautifully, that we should have those things, have that study in place, have that foresight in place, um, that process really strengthen it as much as we can. Like we can't do 100%, I understand that, but as much as we can to avoid as many issues as possible, um, would be my
Yeah,
takeaway from this segment. Yeah.
yeah. I think this is a good time to switch to the next not so happy topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like do you want to do you want to pick like a happy topic after this? This is for some reason really um yeah.
Yeah, I think the topic that I'll be picking after that is the happier one, so that's fine. You can go ahead with the fish first.
Okay, let's do that. Let's
Hmm.
do that. Um, this is a report from National Geographic, and it says how a 600 pound, which is around 270 kilos, how a 600 pound, 270 kilo megafish became a collector's item in Thailand. Critically endangered Mekong giant catfish. I think we have this. I don't know what we like. We have this fascination with like endangered exotic wildlife for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because it's like unattainable, and humans like what is unattainable. You know.
Yep,
Yeah, we
exactly
have
that.
this.
Exactly that. Like it's like how you tell them you cannot have this or you cannot want this. That is exactly when you would want it.
Yeah, it's the thrill of the chase. How yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
thrill of the chase. How
it's like
we'll
one of those
chase.
things. Yeah, it's just like one of those things that, oh, that pot is hot, don't touch it, and then you're like, now I want to touch it. So it's the same thing that as soon as you say this is endangered, you shouldn't have it, they should be in the wild, and you're like, no, 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 how can they be in the wild? I want one in my house.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that attitude really works well in like the day-to-day things that we have created for ourselves, like jobs and achieving something, goals in our life, this and that, all the take control of your life. stuff that goes around. Law of attraction, this and that, manifestation. Oh my God, all those things. It works really well, but for the Mekong giant catfish, once plentiful but now vanishingly rare in the wild, are surprisingly abundant in captivity across Thailand. uh, it's funny how how the article reads as well. A 200-pound specimen found at a flooded train station of all places last year highlighted this hidden thriving population. I mean, uh, so if it's a hidden population, if it's a hidden thing, if it's not a popular thing, like not pop, it's a popular thing in those circles, but outside of the circles, it's not very well known. That means those people know that this is illegal, wrong, morally, ethically wrong as well, but um, still choosing to do that.
Yeah, and imagine
Um,
like the floods came to this level that you had whatever, like a pond in your backyard that flooded, and then this fish went swimming all the way to a train station, and the people are
yeah,
like, why is there such a big fish here at the train station?
yeah. These megafish, along with the similarly threatened giant barb. What's a barb?
It's another
Do you know?
fish. It's another
Oh, is it
fish. Yeah.
another fish?
Yeah.
Are extensively bred in government hatcheries, commercial farms, and private ponds for various uses like fishing. Always got to be a religious purposes, or ornamental displays. This vastly undocumented captive stock significantly outnumbers a few remaining wild populations. Of course, if we like something, yeah, we'll breed it to you know multiply as much, double, triple the wild stock. Scientists such as Zeb Hogan are now actively exploring whether these captive bred fish could be instrumental in reversing the species decline. With proper scientific conservation efforts, these stocks might effectively bolster wild population and prevent the disappearance of these iconic freshwater giants, offering a hopeful strategy. Oh, I think then this might not be something like an illegal trade or anything like that. It's just people wanted to keep this fish and you know having.
I mean, we do not know what the extent is of how they're allowed. Obviously, there are government hatcheries, so the government ones probably are not for like a commercial thing, but there are
Mhm.
commercial farms, so they might be licensed, but we do not know the other areas and how much they're licensed. But
The backyard
even then,
ponds.
yeah, but even then, I think the main takeaway from this article, the main question here is that there are more in captivity than there are in the wild, and now
Mhm.
we need the captive population to help restore the wild population, which is such an irony because obviously, they must have all been taken from the wild at some time, and then they were bred in captivity, and now they're plentiful because they were bred in certain conditions, and now we need the captive population to be like, okay, go back into the wild and become plentiful where you're meant to be plentiful.
Yeah, and I think we have discussed um, the problems of having these isolated population in the wild as well, right, Meghna? Like with their gene pools and things like that, and how it can cause a threat sometimes for them to be released in the wild as well. But it was the same with the tiger population. I think most of you might have seen this documentary, which is a very fun documentary, but it's called The Tiger King. It's a human interest documentary, but it also goes on to highlight the problem, the captive breeding of tigers in the United States. Yeah, if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. It's a good one. It's a binge worthy one.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
And then
um,
I think in that documentary they even show this species called a liger, which is like
mm,
a lion and tiger mix, and they're neither a lion, neither a tiger, and they are not able to operate as either one of them, and they're just big and huge. And okay, that's a different topic, but I think the main topic there is also the same thing, that there are more tigers in captivity than there in the wild, which is
Exactly.
concerning for any species. When we say there are more in captivity than there in the wild, especially an animal that's meant to be wild, then it's really, really, concerning, because you need
And
to,
like,
yeah.
for an animal which takes that amount of effort to, keep them in the wild, you always need to be aware of them. You need, these giant, huge prison like cells. You can't really play with them in a very safe setting inside your home. So if you want a pet, why would you want a tiger as a pet? Why wouldn't you want like a cat, which is like a small tiger? Maybe get a cat which looks like a tiger rather than getting like an actual tiger. Um, but
There is no way to, there's no way to justify or know why people want something. I mean, imagine that you want a 300 kilo fish in your backyard. Like, I mean, you have to create such a big pond for it to thrive, one of them to thrive, or multiple of them to thrive. But imagine a huge fish in your backyard, or multiple huge fish in your backyard, and you're trying to create all this big space for them instead of
and
just
it,
letting them be in the wild.
Yeah, I would have understood if this was like a competition thing, like all the koi fish in Japan, who grows the biggest koi fish or something like that. But it's not. It's like a hidden market. It's like a not hidden as in not very popular thing. So I would I yeah, I have no idea why people would even want it, except just being fascinated by it. And again, as you said, very very hard to say why people are fascinated by it. And this article also, what I was saying a minute ago, it also says that you know researchers first need to know how many captive fish there are, where they're being kept, and how genetically diverse they are. That's the problem with also like using a captive population and unmonitored captive population, I think, as well, for to restock the wild species, is because you know we don't know that
Exactly. I
how
think
genetically diverse they are.
one is the genetical diversity. Other, we do not know if they are completely captive, if they're released into the wild, how they would survive, what is their percentage of survival. So that needs to be taken into account. And then also maybe like stricter rules about having them as pets, because imagine that they are repopulated in the wild, and then people again start picking them up from the wild and bringing them to their houses. So you have to be very careful about at what level are you, commercially growing them and then repopulating them, and then what are the people doing about it. Because if you're going to have them as pets and also have them in the wild, then you have to have a clear distinction of how people have access to them.
Mm, yeah. And I think that's uh, that's where I think the importance of studying these animals, or whatever we do, studying the impact of those things again is paramount in each one of those scenarios, because if we don't study it, if we don't assess the long-term impact of a thing. And I'm not saying that everything we do must be um, sort of preceded by a study that oftentimes maybe counterproductive to do that. But I also think there should be our general attitude should be that we are investing some amount of the net effort towards science as well. We are not just leaving something just because we think it's going to be fine. We're just not leaving something there and not paying any attention to it until the time comes. We have to kind of pay attention to it. That's what I think is the right approach. Like, we invest some amount of money, effort, resources to actually validating what we think is is a valid approach. Um,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think at least in this story, I would say there's one thing that at least the captive populations, if they are successful in
Mm.
repopulating the wild population, then it's a great thing that way that they are existing in the captivity in captivity, so that there's at least hope for the wild species.
Yeah, and from the sounds of it, I don't think this. I don't know. I don't know about the owners, but um, I I think there might not be too much sort of backlash from the owners for the doesn't sound like it from the article. It might be the case. I don't know if it's a collector's item. It might be the owners might be very precious about their collected fish, giant catfish. But if it's not that big of a problem, then yeah, it can be a net positive, especially if there are like farms and stuff where it's purely a sort of financial transaction where the government and other um, conservation societies can sort of pay that cost, pay that difference to be able to buy those back from those fisheries, etc. Um, if that could save endangered species like this, um, then yeah, it would be a net positive in my view. In
Yeah,
my view as well.
because I think at the end of the day, if something's called endangered, you want to bring up their population to a non-endangered status in the wild, then keep them in your backyard and be like, oh, at least we have them somewhere, even if not
Mm,
in the wild. That's not how it has to be. I mean, every animal has its role to play in the ecosystem, and if that animal's not going to stay there, there's going to be some issue, because with fish also they're in the food chain of other fish. So there'll be a gap created, and we wouldn't know the impact for it till much later. So we need to
mm,
make those efforts, and it's great that at least that effort is being made in this species. So hopefully the next time we read something about this, then there'll be something more positive, that its endangered status is being reversed.
mm. And but I think Meghna, like it's it's sad that it's coming to the point where we hear, although not like very frequently, but I believe it's a very frequent in sort of the geological timeline, where we hear these reports of this species only surviving in the wild. Like IUCN, which gives the endangered status to all species, has a special status called extinct in the wild. Imagine that, like we have a status, like an endangered status for animals which says extinct in the wild. How wild is that? um so it's coming to that point for a lot of different species. And I think, as I said, I keep repeating this, uh, this plight is a lot more visible for a lot of the megafauna, but you never hear, even what we cover. There's a lot less, you know focus on the insects, or the microfauna, as we say, or even the flora, which is not very visible in terms of size and its impact. So I think that's another thing that we have got to sort out as a species as well. Like, what are we doing with all these extinct in the wild species? Why is it you know reaching that state? You know. Um.
I mean, we know why it's reaching that state, but at the same time, we need
Yeah.
to
True.
make bigger efforts to not only keep them in captivity, but have them first in the wild. That should be our priority. That wild animals belong in the wild. That should always be our first priority, and then, um, you know, depending on where, who are, and what is, then you can have them as pets. I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, I would still be very, very discouraging of having anything wild as a pet, but humans being humans, they will always want to have exotic species as pets.
Yes. And I think the Mekong catfish was assessed by the IUCN Red List last in 2011. But it says it is least concern, but it also says in the habitat and ecology section that it the habitat is wetlands, but mainly it's artificial, um, aquatic and marine, sort of artificial spaces that these are thriving in. So this least concern is not really a true representation of, you know, of it being. It doesn't represent its status in the wild. It just says, okay, there's a stable population of it, but we don't know whether that population is genetically diverse or if it's even, it can even reach a space in the wild where it's not threatened in the wild, as well. So yeah, I think that space, things being extinct in the wild, is completely, um, yeah, it's a I don't know, dangerous space to be in, and I think we shouldn't exist in that reality where we are letting something get extinct in the wild just because we know we have a stock in captivity. I think that's where I would say, no, no, no. We focus on that population first, um, and then we also have this backup strategy. Is something, you know, if
Did you
despite all our efforts.
show the viewers how that fish looks?
I did. I did share. I can share it again. But yeah, it's not a it's not a pretty looking fish as well. You wouldn't want it in your aquariums and stuff. I don't know. Maybe you would. I can't speak for everyone. But yeah, this is how this fish looks. Yeah.
And the thing
So
is, it's really weird because it has a sacred status as well. Like, you know, how
mm,
they are, for even religious purposes, they're
yeah,
in
the
temple.
religious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're in temple ponds and everything. So when it's religious, I mean, when it's important in a religious perspective, that means that you actually care for that animal. So it's
Mm,
really weird that you would care for the animal in, in a temple pond setup, or in your house setup, but you actually don't care for it enough for it to thrive in the wild. That is the irony of it.
yeah. Yeah. Um. I mean, again, does that surprise you though? That it's not surprising, right? It's like, you remember the temple tigers thing that got really popular through, I think, a BBC documentary, and only for us to later find out that it was all this racket of like poaching and,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
I've been to that place in Thailand. I
yeah,
know. So it was, they drugged I think the tigers, and then they used to have these tiger. Uh, I don't know. A lot of things were found when they were caught. I think there were like these
yeah.
tiger babies
I
in
mean,
brine stored, and
yeah,
all these
they were
tigers were like,
basically, trading those parts of the tigers for like traditional medicine and things like that.
yeah, but then they showed, like, they had all these rescued tigers, and they were keeping the tigers tame by feeding them boiled meat, which did not have like traces of blood or something. So there was a lot of like, what would you say, just anything being thrown about just so that they could have tigers for entertainment.
Yeah,
So
and I think religion is often that cover story, a good cover story for people who want to be doing those kinds of activities as well, right?
yeah,
Religion is often that cover story that gets people really compassionate and gets people to drop their guards. Basically, oh, it's a religious thing. They must be taking good care. We also thought that at some. I thought that. I know that. At some point, oh, they must be really taking good care of it and things like that. So yeah, don't use religion, guys, to cover up your, um, you know, all the nefarious things
yeah, but I think
that
that
you're
is
doing.
how it works. That is how it works. I think it's
True.
something ironical, how even in India you would say that you have like these female goddesses that you would worship in the temples, but at the same time, outside you would have all these groping, molestation, and rapes with women. So it's always
Mm.
ironical what you would believe in a temple setup. is
Mm,
important, but outside it just doesn't matter. So in a temple
mm,
pond, that probably that uh, fish, the the catfish is
mm,
prayed, and it's
mm.
revered, and
Like a
it gets
god.
all, yeah, and it gets all the respect. But outside in the wild, they don't care if it's dying.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah.
if you're commercially farming it, I believe it would be for eating as well. So, yeah. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I mean, but then that would be ironical that you are praying to it and then eating it. It might not
I
be
mean,
anything.
yeah. I mean, that's again a murky conversation to enter as well, considering everything, you know. But but yeah, no, I think yeah, I think that that's a cover story we often use: religion, faith, belief, um, in anything. Like it can be a religious belief, but it can also be like a legend or something you choose to believe in, like a fictional story that we have created. And law, like, oh, it's not illegal to do this. Law is a fictional thing that we have created for ourselves. So just because it's not illegal doesn't mean it's not immoral or unethical or things like that. But anyway, that's the story about the 600-pound, 300-kilo megafish
Yeah,
from Thailand.
we're hoping that at some point of time, um, the gap that is there, that the animals that are in captivity are at least 1,000 times more than what remain in the wild. That gap reduces, and there are more in the wild, and they thrive in the wild where they actually should be thriving.
Mm. Yeah. Um. All right. Should we move on to the next one, Meghna?
Sure. So the next topic we have is a happier topic. So community efforts yield a new marine protected area in the Philippines. The Philippines has officially designated the Bitaug Marine Protected Area (MPA) in Siquijor province, culminating an 18-year campaign by the local communities, fisher associations, and civil society organizations. The Wildlife Conservation Society announced on August 13 that this nearly 150 hectare MPA is the largest in Sikihor, encompassing a 44-hectare core and 105-hectare buffer zone. So it protects the coastal waters rich in diverse corals, reef fish, seagrass, and commercially vital species, including sharks and turtles. The
Mm.
MPA prohibits catching sharks and rays except for research. And ecotourism activities like snorkeling and diving are permitted with revenue reinvested into the community and local conservation efforts.
That's good.
So I think this is the best thing that, I mean, the people have worked so hard for it. So now whatever the people are helping earn for it, it's going back into their efforts of saving it. So the Bitog Fisher Folk Association, instrumental in its creation, will co-manage the area with the local government, realizing an 18-year dream. So this is amazing that these people have worked for 18 long years, and now the government is at least not sidelining them. They're going to be working with the government in protecting this area. So, for these fishermen, they must have seen the changes that's happening in these areas, and then pushed for the betterment of these areas, and wanted the area to be protected because they've seen what happens when the areas are not protected. And this is something amazing that you see, if people come together and really want to make a change, they can make a change. This is one of the prime examples of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think um, it's always good to hear those local communities taking a really keen interest, because the local communities are the people who know about it's like saving your neighborhood. You are the ones who will know the most about your neighborhood. You'll know the most about your backyard and things like that. So you know if those communities are motivated enough to take matters into their own hands and you know have that really uh, you know approach have that approach of we will protect our space. We will try and protect work to, and it's a 18-year campaign, so 18-year dream. So it's really, you know, really a great success story there, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is what is really important, that we have to see, like, if you're local and you care for the environment, and if all the people come together, you can make a change. And this is where I think sometimes you feel like, yeah, there is hope, because you see all these people and you see these positive stories between
Mm,
all the negative stories that you have, that people are coming together and they're creating these, they're lobbying so that these protected areas can be created. And similar to what the first news that we spoke about, even though that wasn't intentional, this one is
mm,
intentional, and the
mm.
sharks and the turtles would be protected, leading to better fish population in that area. And and now these animals cannot be fish, so they're going to be protected, which is such a win-win. I mean, imagine working for 18 years on something and seeing it come alive.
That is exactly right, and it is such a great thing. Um, it is such a great thing there, and I think when the community effort is behind it, that means you have got like like a citizen science project, almost a citizen, also citizen policing project, where every citizen is that, that aware of all the things that's going on. So that means if a tourist comes and they try to, um hamper with all those things that's going on, um every citizen is capable and is equipped with that very base level knowledge to be able to say, don't do that, don't. This is our effort that we're doing. This is our community effort that we're doing. This has taken a long time, and they might be able to explain that. And this also means, like, for generations to come, that knowledge is being passed on from one generation to the next, that, and and that effort and that will to protect will only increase over time. It will only, go up. Um, you know. So, again, very good, net positive as well, but also very inspiring. Um, I would say.
Yep. So I think that is what it is, that um if people can do that. And I think this is where it is really important. So, like, once when I was in Chennai, I went for this walk in the night where you could see turtles come to the beach and lay their eggs. And there's this whole community that protects these hatcheries. And what they were telling me is that the local fishermen, they can just tap on the sand and they can tell you where a turtle nest is. While people who are working in this NGO or this group, they used to carry this pipe and they had to, like, kind of just poke the hole, the ground, and where the pipe would kind of go inside,
Mm,
that is where the nest is. So the locals and their knowledge is unparalleled. I mean, the way that they know their environment. So they're the ones who have to first step up to save something. So anywhere that you are local to, if you have to save something, you have to step up to it, because you know the local environment better than anybody else. And fishermen are really, really, I think, I mean, the ocean is everything that they work towards. So when they see the ocean dying, I think a part of them dies. And so this is really inspirational that they were able to save something that meant so much to them.
yeah, and as you said, like, nobody would have that local knowledge. Even the scientists would not have that. You see all those. I love watching the behind the scenes for any natural history documentary, and you'll see every, even the scientists that are working there, they would stress on the fact in those, behind the scenes interviews, that the local knowledge is just unparalleled. Like, I watched this episode the other day. It's called Parenthood. Again, another series from David Attenborough. But they were tracking these chimpanzees in Congo, and they were like, "Oh, we couldn't even tell where the chimpanzees were or where they were going, but these local guides, local people, they instantly saw a half-eaten leaf and they were like, oh, they went this direction. So yeah, it's nobody has that knowledge except for the local people. So it's very inspiring, as I said, and as I keep repeating, to see the local people getting, and I think this is only possible, this kind of an effort, this intense intensity of an effort where you work for 18 years for achieving something constantly. This is only possible in this context, like in a conservation context. um, it is only possible for the local people, locals
Yeah,
of an area, to
and
achieve that.
that is true. And talking about locals, there's a same story, similar story that's happening in Mexico. So there's this NGOs that have launched a novel community project to conserve Mexico's ocelots. The ocelot, an often overlooked small feline, is gaining scientific attention for surprising behaviors, including interactions with opossums. Despite sharing its range with more charismatic jaguars, camera traps reveal its widespread presence, though often as bycatch and monitoring efforts for larger cats. So they're not as important, so there are no camera traps set especially for the ocelots. In Mexico, the ocelot is endangered due to habitat loss, hunting, and increasingly climate change. So because you have longer dry periods where they're not able to get to water, it drives them towards human settlements during these during the summers. So now they go in search of water, so that has become a human wildlife conflict issue. Citizen scientist Esteban Dominguez near Calakmul Biosphere Reserve has been instrumental since 2014, confirming their
Mm,
existence through camera trap data despite their elusive nature. His work highlights the species challenges and the vital role of local engagement in conservation, especially in buffer zones like Konuas, where communities face rainforest proximity. And like the
mm,
last one was a community effect, this one is more a one man like wagon. So this person has kind of dedicated his research towards ocelots, and has also, I think, done these he's also tried to create like new water reserves so that the ocelots don't start going into human settlements. So this is amazing how one person and the efforts that one person can create this ripple effect where the entire like NGO start getting involved. So similar to the last story, this is a whole community engagement and locals striving to save a population.
yeah, and I think this also highlights another fact where what I was saying a moment before as well, that and it mentions in the article as well, where because ocelots are not as visible as jaguars, they're more shy. Of course, there are more little species. Like historically, not much of the conservation effort has gone towards that. Jaguars, obviously, we know there's a huge conservation efforts to protect and make sure the jaguars are all fine. But obviously, ocelots being living in the same space, sharing the same forest, but just by being smaller, which in turn makes them shyer and harder to track. Lot less has historically gone towards this species.
And I think this is again something that we were speaking about earlier. Like we care more about the species that are visible, like that are bigger, that are charismatic, but we don't
Mm,
really focus our efforts towards the smaller ones. I mean, when you have cats inside people's home and people love cats, but when it goes into the wild, you just want to save the bigger cats, like the lions and the jaguars and the pumas and the tigers. You don't put in the same kind of conservation efforts into the smaller species like the ocelots.
mm. And I think um, one of the parts of the article mention this, and I'm sort of sharing the photo on my screen as well. Um, educating children and taking school children for this ocelot walking group, which I think is, you know, the most brilliant thing that can be done. um, getting the next generation prepared, both mentally, and getting them into the discourse. Like, children are so much, you know, impressionable. We know that for a fact, and we know it intuitively as well. You know, they have a very malleable mind, and they mirror the actions of adults for a long period in a person's life. So passing this message on to children and getting them involved, like getting them involved in the day-to-day running of these organizations, and the day-to-day running of these, like an after-school program. You know, I agree. We must, you know, have those after-school programs where we are getting them more in tune, getting our children more in tune with arts, and you know, trying different kinds of um, you know, maybe training for a musical instrument, training for singing, dancing, all these sorts of stuff. We should be getting it, but also I think there's enough bandwidth for a child to also absorb things nature related as well. And I think this is uh is a brilliant thing that this article mentioned, and that these people were trying to save the ocelots and trying
Um,
to, you
yeah,
know,
I think one of the things is it's not a walking group; it's a working group, like a
working
rescue.
group. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Oh, I love that. How they have used the, you know, the prints to
Yeah, yeah,
oh,
the
that's even
paw.
more brilliant.
Yeah, it's the paw and the print
It's
of
the
the
paw.
ocelot. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yes,
the
the
paw of the
the
ocelot.
print of the Ocelot. Yeah, that's even more brilliant. So it's not even a walking group, it's a working group. So the children are involved in the day-to-day working. Yeah, which is even more brilliant. In some shape and form. Like they might not be doing, you know, all the accounting and things like that, but in some shape and form, school children are being involved, which I find is uh an invaluable thing for these kinds of efforts as well.
I think how Oop said, if we get them involved young, then they will be interested in them and save them when they get older. So the same thing how we spoke last time. I think how Oops and me were introduced to wildlife and nature when we were really young, so we still care about it and we talk about it a lot only because of how we were raised. So that is a really really important aspect of growing up, that if you want your kids to be passionate about the environment and passionate about wildlife, you have to play a role in inculcating it into them.
Yeah, yeah, and I think uh, this these kinds of efforts, for especially for, you know, smaller species, especially in countries which have had um, uh, you know, tumultuous history of poaching. That's wrong to say. Every country has had that impact of poaching, some more or less than others, but every country has had that impact. So it's wrong for me to point out just the countries which have been in the news in recent times. But yeah, I would say every space that we can implement these types of programs in, and as we said, like it's only possible for the locals, for someone who has that connection to the patch of grass in the forest, patch of forest. It's only um, possible for some of those people to be able to take matters into their own hands. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful thing to be involved with. Again, governments should support these kinds of events and these kinds of efforts as well, because I think this is one of the most impactful, and in my view, one of the only sustainable ways to go about saving not only one single species but an ecosystem. I think that's the more
That is
important
true.
part.
I think that is where, you know, it makes a big change, that if the people get involved, animals will always thrive. So we need to, instead of creating that distance, how we spoke about in our last episode, that we're disconnected with nature, we need that fostering and that reconnect, so that we can actually save nature, and we can save
Mm.
the animals, we can save the environment. And it's great that we have these positive stories coming out, because if these positive stories continue to grow, then we can probably save the earth for longer than we anticipate. Because right now, going by how the
Mm.
climate change and everything is happening,
It's
maybe,
bleak.
yeah, it's
It's bleak
bleak.
out
It's
there.
probably some 50, 60 years,
Yeah.
give or take. But if we are able to actually sustain this, and the sad part is, obviously, the generations going forward will have more pressure to save. So if we can inculcate it into them this young, then the earth might have a fighting chance. We might not be extinct as fast as we think we would be.
And it would be a beautiful thing. Um, we'll enjoy it. Like, it is an enjoyable process. Like, again, for those of you who are, I imagine most of you are watching this from a phone or listening to this on a phone or a TV or something like that. Um, we have our urban commitments. We have all those things. But whatever we can do, like, one of the most impactful things I believe, if you're living in an urban environment, obviously you'll have your responsibilities, and nobody's like, we're not trying to say that, oh, leave everything and go to the forest. We are not able to do that. We are tied up in our day-to-day life as well. But ask your government, ask your representatives to use your tax dollars or tax rupees in a way where they're supporting these kinds of efforts. Some of those
Hmm.
efforts die off due to the lack of funding or things like that.
Obviously funding, but I think secondly, you should also be asked how you can get involved in it, because the only way you would have some kind of respect for the environment or nature is when you get involved. So
Mm.
like maybe a little bit today get involved into maybe just an online petition, but get involved slowly into nature and environment. Take a walk, go into the forest, do a safari, get connected, and then get into like maybe volunteering projects. But community engagement is very important and very crucial to conserving any species anywhere.
Mm. Yeah. Be like these school children. Get involved, and parents, let your children get involved. Don't whatever they feel like introduce them to these ideas, you know these conversations. Have these conversations with them early on, um, because they're the people who will go on to become lawmakers and have those powerful positions they will hold um, across the society. So yeah, get them introduced to these conversations and see how it impacts the overall approach. Yeah. Um,
I think, I mean, that is a beautiful story to end our episode on, because we started it with a net positive story, and we're ending it on a net positive story. So I think, um, sometimes we have all gloom stories. So it's nice to be able to end and begin, like begin and end with positive stories.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think we can sort of draw close there, and yeah, as Meghna said, your what you do and what you do with your time and how you get involved, completely up to you. But try try and get involved in some sort of way, and I mean, reach out to us as well. Like, if you are, we share all these little ways that you can get involved over our episodes. But yeah, also um, comment what you are doing in your day-to-day life, despite being busy with job, kids, this and that. What are you able to achieve there, if you're doing anything as small as donating $1 or 10 rupees to some conservation cause as well. But yeah, anything else, Meghna, before we close the episode out for the audience?
No, I mean, I just hope, just like every time else, if you have any feedback for us, or whatever you think about the show, if there's something you think that we should be improving on, please do let us know. And do let us know what you're doing, for your little bit in the community engagement for conserving wildlife. We would love to know it. So that's about it.
Yeah, and again, don't forget to like and subscribe to all our different modes of social media. We are here on YouTube, then we are on Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. We are basically everywhere. So yeah, go give us a follow there and check out all the short form content that we put out there as well. If you're listening to a recorded version of this podcast, then yeah, do feel like if you feel like leaving a rating and comment, it really helps us out with the algorithm and how our show gets more visibility and more viewers. But apart from that, that's it for today, and we'll see you next Sunday, same time, same channel. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.